Disney princesses. You know 'em, you love 'em. Well, maybe not all of them. But that's why I, Rockotar, am here to sort the good ones from the bad ones and rank them accordingly. But first, a few quick rules. All the officially counted Disney princesses will be included on the list, as well as a few others who aren't officially recognized by Disney, but it would be ridiculous not to include them, as the only real reasons for them to not be included is that they aren't marketable enough or some such nonsense. And also, no live-action characters like Giselle, and I know she's like animated at the beginning of the movie, but since she spends most of the movie not animated, I'm not counting her. No animal characters like Nala from The Lion King, and no, I'm not including Ariel's daughter or the Three Stooges from Mulan 2. And with all that out of the way, let us begin the ranking. Unfortunately, we have to start with a controversial opinion. You see, the worst Disney princess is, in fact, Moana. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why is Moana the worst Disney princess? Isn't she beloved? Isn't she surely one of the best Disney princesses? That's what everyone on the internet always says, isn't it? Well, my friend, I'm afraid they're wrong. You see, Moana is not only a selfish jerk who only ever thinks about herself and wants to do her way and nobody else's way, and the movie will always praise her and make sure she's always right in everything she ever does and will justify every single one of her actions, but she's also a Mary Sue who does everything perfectly and can do everything better than anyone else, and she has 10,000 more abilities than everyone else too, not to mention. And the movie will remind you all the time how great she is, that she can never do anything wrong. You should always vote Moana, never vote Maui, never vote the island people, never vote even the ocean. Oh, but what about when Moana crashed those couple times in the sea? No, wrong. Fake news. Those crashes, those weren't real. Like when she crashed on Maui's island, well, guess what? Nothing bad actually happened. So how could it be a mistake if nothing bad actually came from it? Oh, not to mention, they can't forget the part where she blames the ocean for everything going wrong, even though nothing even went wrong in the first place. But the fact that she doesn't even assume responsibility for her supposed mistake in the first place is a very endearing character trait, am I right? And on top of all of that, she's always so smug about everything. Just look at that face. It's always me, I am Moana. Just shut up! Please. Alright, moving on. Yeah, unfortunately, the next person on our list isn't exactly great either. And it's, of course, the only Pixar Disney princess, Merida. You see, Merida's biggest problem is that she's always complaining in the entire first half of the movie. Like, seriously, name any scene that isn't the first scene where she's literally a baby, where she isn't complaining. I dare you. It's an impossible challenge. And even though a few of her complaints are somewhat valid, it doesn't matter much because she's so unlikable. Like, they never give us a single scene where she's presented as just being nice or doing something for someone else. It's always about her. Her mom isn't much better at the beginning of the movie, but at least she's given a couple scenes of just being nice or being normal, you know, but Merida gets none of that. Not to mention she's also very smug about everything too, just like Moana. However, I do put her slightly above Moana because at the very least, she does get slightly better near the end of the movie, and her selfish actions actually have consequences, unlike Moana, who gets away with literally everything. Either way you put it, these two are the worst by far. I cannot stand them. Oh look, it's the most overrated Disney princess of all time, Elsa, who is not exactly that much better than Merida or Moana, but it's a significant enough gap that I don't have a burning, passionate hatred of her. But that still doesn't make her a good character. You see, the biggest problem with Elsa is the fact that she's an idiot, and also very unloyal to her citizens, but mainly that she's an idiot. How so? Well, let's think about this. She has special ice powers, but then she thinks they're a danger because of something the trolls or her father said to her. So what does she do? She hides away for like practically her entire life, not telling anyone about this, even though talking to people would probably be the best solution. She actively makes her life harder for her by doing something stupid in the first place. But it doesn't end there. You see, when she has the little incident that happens in the castle, what does she do? She runs away and decides to go live on her own in the middle of nowhere. When, oh, I don't know, maybe if you just talked it out to people, then they would have understood the problem and not hated you. Except Mr. Weasel over here, but he'd be the exception. I'm shocked that Elsa's supposed love for Anna even works in the finale of the movie, since she didn't really seem to care that much for her for most of her life, since she shut her out all the time. And when she came all the way to her ice castle, she was just like, please leave, Anna. Oh, and things get worse in the sequel, by the way, did I mention? Because now Elsa goes on this mission to discover the secret of the voice calling out to her. But what does she decide to do midway through this mission? Oh, let's see. She abandons all her friends and allies again to go off and do something on her own. And then, in the finale of the movie, she abandons her people once and for all by leaving Arendelle altogether to live in magical, whispery woods land, making Anna the queen instead. Wow, so loyal to your subjects, Elsa. You really know how to handle responsibility. Like, I literally don't care if she has a cool ice powers, because it doesn't matter when her character is so awfully written. But at least she does two good things in the story that save her from being below the previous two. Those being, of course, when she saves Anna with her love, and when she actually does something selfless for once, and risks her life to discover the truths of what happened in Arendelle's past in Frozen 2. But if it weren't for those two moments, she'd be almost on the same level as the other two characters.
I will admit, though, Let It Go is pretty catchy.
But anyways, I'm tired of all this negativity. Let us get on to the princesses who are at least okay. Now, I don't know if you've seen my Snow White review video, but in that, I mentioned how, boring Snow White is as a character. She doesn't really have much personality at all, and all her characteristics can be boiled down to three simple traits: cooking, cleaning, and singing. Wow, the most unique character I've ever heard of in my life. Totally not the most stereotypical female character ever made. But unlike the previous three characters, Snow White isn't actively unlikable. She's just uninteresting. Well, except for a couple very brief moments where she makes a couple sarcastic comments about the dwarves. But, you know, there's very little of that. It's not nearly enough to save her character. Though I do like her design. It has a lot of color to it. It's pretty good, actually. Also, she's still to this day one of the only Disney princesses to have short hair. I don't know what their thing is against short hair for some reason, but, you know, whatever, I guess. Can't really think of anything else to say about Snow White, so, next. Princess Eilonwy. The most forgotten Disney princess by far. But I unfortunately don't have that many positive things to say about Eilonwy either, so it kind of does make sense why she's forgotten, on top of the fact that the movie she comes from is just not very well known in the first place. But anyways, I do like that when she first appears, she's already escaping from the Horned King's castle on her own, breaking the trend of the damsel in distress princess that needs to be rescued. She also has this magical flying gold ball thing, but it's pretty irrelevant and barely pops up in the rest of the movie anyways. I don't even know why I brought it up in the first place. Anyways, she has this little, sort of romantic subplot with Tarzan, the main character, but it barely goes anywhere, and they're, kids anyway, so, whatever. I don't know what it is, though, whenever she introduces herself to anyone in this movie, which, I mean, it only happens a couple times, but whenever she does it, it's something about it just really annoys me. I don't know, the way she says it or something.
I'm Princess Eilonwy.
Unfortunately, after the whole castle escape sequence of the movie, she pretty much does nothing. Seriously, I'm struggling to think of anything except for getting mad at Tarzan and then, I don't know, making up with him later. I don't know, it really adds nothing to the plot, so, that's still pretty much nothing. When it comes to the climax, she just jack all. She just, hangs on a wall, you know, chained up by the Horned King, and then runs away when all the action is done, you know, with everyone else. Whoop, whoop, am I right? Yeah, not so great of a princess, but I guess breaking out of the castle on her own is enough to put her above Snow White, but, other than that, there's not much to say about her. Moving on. I have surprisingly few things to say about Raya, despite her being a princess who comes from a movie that released in the past 2 years. She's just really not interesting. Pretty much every other character from her movie is more interesting than she is. And yes, that includes the Aquafina dragon. Right now, I'm struggling to even come up with thoughts to say about her. Well, okay, I guess her backstory, aka the intro to the movie, is pretty good. And that's definitely the highlight of her character. I like that basically all the problems of the movie were started by her, and that she feels the need to actually make up and fix everything. But other than that, she's just really, really generic. She might just be the most vanilla Disney protagonist I can think of off the top of my head. Oh, but she's got some cool sword fighting skills. Whoop whoop. It doesn't really make much of a difference in my opinion, personally. Also, her whip chain sword thingy was ripped straight from Fire Emblem Three Houses. In the end, she kind of just decides, well, we all gotta be buddy-buddies or else we dead. So, they all become buddy-buddies, I guess, you know. And it doesn't really feel like she, did it because she earned all their respects or anything. It kind of just feels like they had no choice, you know. It feels so unimpactful and, dare I say, insincere? I don't know. Maybe I'm going too far. I just really got nothing out of her character, and not that much out of the movie either. It's still a fine movie, but really not one of Disney's stronger outings or characters. Next. Princess Aurora seems to be the most unpopular Disney princess for some reason, though I've never really understood why. She's not actually bad. I mean, there's not much to her character really, if you think about it, but not bad, surely. Most people seem to pin this on the fact that she's quote-unquote asleep for half the movie, which she really isn't, because she's only asleep for the finale of the movie, which is only 20 minutes at most. Though I'm not about to call her the most amazing Disney princess ever made. While she does have a good personality, she's likable, friendly, charming, and other such positive traits, she also doesn't have that much development either. Though I do find her struggles of not wanting to marry someone she doesn't love to be better handled than the Merida situation, because at least she doesn't complain every 5 seconds about it, and mostly just accepts it, and is sad about the fact that she might have to marry someone she doesn't love, although thankfully for her, things do turn out well in the end, as it's revealed that the man she fell in love with is in fact the very same person she was supposed to marry anyways. Also, she's the best looking Disney princess.
Not that that matters or anything.
From the least popular Disney princess to the most controversial Disney princess. Pocahontas doesn't really do it for me, if I'm being honest. She's a bit boring, kind of like Raya, but a little bit better than Raya, because at least she has more to do in the plot, and the story is focused around her, so she feels more important and interesting just by that fact alone. But one thing that really doesn't work about her character is the romance subplot with John Smith, as I don't really buy it for the most part. Honestly, I think her romance with John Rolfe in the sequel movie is better, and that is truly a controversial opinion right there. Actually, in fact, I kind of just think she's probably better in the sequel entirely. Probably gonna get killed for saying that. But anyways, back to the first movie. At least her songs are really good boppers. Just Around the River Band is very catchy, and Colors of the Wind, do I even need to explain? Quite possibly the greatest Disney song of all time. Well, either that or one other one, but, you know, I'll mention that other one later on the list, actually. Overall, she's not the best, not the worst, just okay. Ah, Vanellope, that's a character I've been talking about recently, eh? And in fact, a character most of you might have not expected to make it on the list, but due to the twist at the end of the first movie, I'd say she technically qualifies, and also that stupid Disney princess scene in the second movie. But you might also be wondering, hey, didn't you say in your Wreck-It Ralph review that Vanellope was a great and amazing character? So why is she so low on your list? Well, you see, my friend, I was saying that Vanellope was a great character in Wreck-It Ralph. You see, Ralph breaks the internet, on the other hand. Well, I'll get to that in a second. First, let me explain what is good about her. You see, Vanellope is easily one of the most unique and interesting Disney princesses, not really acting like a princess at all, basically just being a little spunky kid instead. She has one of the most unique personalities and designs of any of the Disney princesses. She may be crude at some points, but it does fit her personality, and they never take any of the jokes too far that they're painfully unfunny or cringe-inducing or anything bad like that. They're just kind of a small
small quirk about her character. Her arc of learning to accept herself for who she is amazingly well written and one of the highlights of the movie. But unfortunately, then comes the sequel, where they decided to turn her into an idiot who decides to break all the rules of the first movie and literally go turbo to go live in some random super violent racing game with Miss Edgelord over here. And of course, I already mentioned the stupid Disney princess scene. Like, what the heck were they even thinking with all this nonsense in the song? I'm gagging just thinking about it. Mercifully, she wasn't quite as horrendously character assassinated as Ralph was in this movie, though. Now that's another story for another day, isn't it, hey? Or a Schaeferless Productions video, which pretty much explains perfectly why the movie sucks. Anyway, altogether, Vanellope is great in the first movie, and pretty bad in the second movie. And since I was taking into account sequels for other characters' movies, especially considering the fact that this is a Walt Disney Animation Studios movie and not one of those straight-to-DVD sequel movies, meaning it's quote-unquote more legit than those ones. So if I was going to ignore any of them, it wouldn't be Ralph Breaks the Internet. And that's why Vanellope is kind of lower than she ought to be if I was only basing her ranking off the first movie. Here we have another unofficial Disney princess in Jane from Tarzan. Though I do think Jane should count because Tarzan is technically the king of the jungle, as they say, which would make Jane the queen of the jungle since she marries Tarzan, and that's pretty close to a princess if you ask me. In fact, the only reason I think Disney doesn't count Jane as an official princess is because of some sort of copyright thing with Tarzan license or something. Unfortunate, but alas. It's still not going to stop me from putting her on the list, though. Jade's pretty great overall, though nothing too amazing or spectacular. I like her insatiable curiosity and bouncy personality. She just brings so much energy to the movie, which is kind of funny because normally it's the guy characters who are the energetic ones and the lady characters who are the calm ones, but in Tarzan they reversed it completely. Her romance with Tarzan is pretty good, though not Disney's best love story or anything, but solid throughout in my opinion. And my favorite part about the whole thing is probably how bold Jane is to give up everything that she had in London to live out in the middle of the jungle. I mean, think about all those quality of life things she's just thrown away. I mean, she doesn't even have access to a toilet anymore, for Pete's sake. Though her father's arguably even more bold, since he didn't even have to do this because it's not like he's finding someone he wants to marry in the middle of the jungle. Though that's part of what makes him such a great father, honestly, and one of the great underrated comic relief characters of Disney movies. And Jane's relationship with her father is another thing that I actually quite like about her character. They're just such a charming and quirky daughter and father duo. Together they add so much heart to the movie and I love it. Also, the British accent is always a plus. Jane, a goodie but not a greatie. Well, look who it is. It's the underrated princess sister from Frozen, Anna, who is significantly better than her sister, Elsa. Whilst Elsa is very much an idiot, Anna isn't nearly so bad. In fact, she's quite good. Now, she does have a couple of moments of dimness, but that's mostly to play into her more quirky, awkward personality compared to her sister. People seem to think Elsa is the more relatable of the sisters, but honestly, I highly disagree. I think Anna is much more relatable than Elsa, and she's much more entertaining to watch. She's funnier, has a better design, and a halfway decent romance plot with Kristoff. And might I add that she too has some pretty good songs in the movie, especially Love is an Open Door, which you don't need me to explain why it's good. Unfortunately, she too slightly, maybe suffers a little bit from Frozen 2, but not quite to the dramatic extent of Elsa. I'm mainly referring to the part where they really overdo the sad, dramatic scene near the end, where she's all depressed. Oh, it's the end of the world. But it's not, like, at all. And she magically just knows what to do because Elsa sends, like, a snow text message to her. It's honestly just a load of nonsense. I also don't necessarily buy some of the other emotional scenes from the first movie either, mainly because they're quite forced, if we're being honest. Frozen movies really want you to feel emotional, but most of the time they're just puppeteering your emotions, and nothing bad is actually going to happen, except of course her parents dying. But even then they're too chicken to actually show them dying, so they just have them crash in a shipwreck. Overall, I quite like Anna, but there's definitely much better princesses as well. And falling just outside the top 10, we find Ariel from The Little Mermaid. Ariel is a character that I see a lot of people often complain about, but I think most of their complaints are a bit over-exaggerated, or not really that accurate. While yes, Ariel can be selfish at some points, But her selfish actions were often motivated by other things, such as when her father destroyed her collection, or in general, just her father not really liking her obsession with humans in the first place. The thing is, it's not like Ariel's obsession with the humans was ever doing anyone harm. And when she missed the concert at the beginning of the movie, it's not like she did that intentionally. She feels bad about missing the concert because she accidentally forgot, which is something that I'm pretty certain most people can relate to. And you see, Ariel's good traits certainly outweigh her bad traits. She has a nice and friendly attitude, a cute personality, and definitely stands out compared to most of the other princesses, you know, being a mermaid and all. Plus, when she loses her voice because of the deal that she makes with Ursula, she's still a great character because even when she can't talk, her facial expressions and body language are still amazing, and you can easily tell what she's thinking in every scene anyways, despite all that. In fact, I'd argue she's almost a better character when she can't talk. But on the other hand, she does almost doom the entire ocean because of her crush on Prince Eric. And another thing that people throw at Ariel that isn't really that accurate either is that she gets everything she wants despite being selfish, which isn't really true because she doesn't get what she wants because of her selfishness. It's actually because of the kindness and mercy of her father, who's finally realized that he was wrong in the first place, that she actually gets what she wants because he gives it to her because he feels sorry for her and that he realizes he messed up when he destroyed her collection. See, Ariel is actually a great character in my opinion, though because she does almost doom the entire ocean, and there are a few other characters better than her, she doesn't quite crack the top 10.
Oh, and by the way, I heard a rumor that they are giving away free official Disney Princess certificates to anyone who clicks the subscribe button below, as well as free Disney Prince certificates to anyone who clicks the like buttons. It is just a rumor, though.
Kicking off the top 10, we have a character that some people may think that I have underrated a bit, and that is Jasmine, who is certainly one of the most popular Disney princesses. And while I do definitely like her, I don't think she's quite as amazing as some people make her out to be. She's got a good, strong personality, but never to an annoying or condescending kind of level, like Moana. Her design is amazing, and her romance with Aladdin is definitely one of the better Disney romances. But also, she does, on the other hand, consider abandoning all her people and responsibility at one point to run away. Then again, you could argue it was more of a Quasimodo, one day out there kind of situation. But ultimately, she does kind of drop that whole idea and go back to being the princess, so I don't hold that too much against her or anything. I like that she's one of the smarter princesses, discovering that Prince Ali is actually Aladdin all on her own just by following the clues, and getting him to reveal the truth with a trick question. Her boldness and bravery is another aspect of her character that puts her above a lot of the others. She's able to stand up to some of Jafar's tricks on her own, but she isn't a Mary Sue who's impossible to stop either. And my favorite moment of all has got to be when she kisses Jafar on the lips to distract him so Aladdin can sneak past. Now that might just be the most bold thing any Disney princess has ever done. So yeah, definitely one of the better Disney princesses, but there are still a few that I do like better than her, so she doesn't end up quite in the highest parts of the list. And now we have Tiana from The Princess and the Frog, who's a pretty good Disney princess overall. I like how much of a hard worker she is, and how she actually has to work to earn what she wants to get instead of it being freely given to her, like, say, Aurora. She's also very sassy, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, as sometimes it can be really funny, and occasionally it can be a little bit too much and almost borders on annoying, but thankfully those moments aren't too populated throughout the movie, so it doesn't really hold her back that much. I like how she's able to teach Prince Naveen several things about life that he didn't know, but in the process she ends up learning a few things for herself, as she thought she'd already figured out how life works, but eventually she realizes that she was actually working towards her own self-interest the whole time, and that she needs to be more selfless and help others to ultimately become a better person. And only then is when she actually gets what she wanted the whole time, what she worked so hard to get. Overall, she's one of the most relatable and inspiring of all the Disney princesses, a person you could actually look up to as a fairly realistic role model, though she does still technically become a literal princess by the end of the movie, but still, everything else about her character is fairly realistic and more down to earth than all the other princesses. So yeah, pretty good. Anyways, moving on. What do you know? Another Disney princess who is not included in the official count, but really should be. You see, most people think Tiana was Disney's first diverse princess, but that is actually inaccurate, as there were actually a couple before her, including Kida, and it's pretty shifty that they've been excluded, if you ask me, but that's a whole nother story. Anyways, as for Kida, she's a pretty great character. Kida is a more reserved character, not being too familiar with the outside world, though that doesn't mean she doesn't want to learn more. That's kind of her main thing. She always wants to learn more, and she's very friendly and tries to show Milo and company around Atlantis. And in return, Milo helps her to understand things even she didn't know about her own people. Her innocence and ignorance to the outside world is another thing that makes her quite charming and unique compared to most of the other Disney princesses, in a kind of similar fashion to Ariel. She also has a sad backstory that plays as the opening of the movie, which shows how she nearly lost everything, including her own mother, and most of her kingdom, as it was sunk underneath the sea. And in the end of the movie, Kida has to face her fears and make the same hard decision that her mother had to make all those years ago, risking her own life for the safety of her people. But thanks to the efforts of Milo, thankfully she doesn't end in a fate as terrible as her mother did. And going forward, she chooses to lead her people with wisdom and knowledge, trying to restore what they once had. Kida is truly an underrated and amazing character that never gets any attention from Disney at all, even though she deserves it. And now we go way back, all the way to Disney's second ever princess, Cinderella. So what exactly is it that makes Cinderella so much better than Snow White, the first Disney princess, and why she's so much higher on the list than her? She probably wouldn't be that much higher than Snow White if I were basing her ranking off of just the first movie, but there's also the wild card factor of Cinderella 3, the oft-forgotten masterpiece of a Disney sequel, which greatly expands Cinderella's character while still sticking true to what it was in the first movie. But before we get to that, I do actually like her in the first movie. She was never really bad or anything to begin with, but, just a bit more simple. But the thing that I do like about her in the first movie is how much of a hard worker she is, similar to Tiana. But her hard work is even more impressive than Tiana's because of the fact that she's forced to do this work, and for no reward. Yet, despite that, she endures. Even though Cinderella basically just magically gets gifted everything she'd hoped and dreamed for in the movie, it's not like she didn't deserve it. She was forced to endure all these terrible things throughout her life, and up until this point she had worked so hard for nothing. So Cinderella actually finally getting this reward is quite satisfying to watch. Though of course she does have a little bit of that generic girliness to her in the first movie, just a little bit of pinch here or there of spunk, but nothing too crazy. That is, until you get to the third movie, and by the way, I literally don't care about the second movie, so I'm not going to mention it at all if you're wondering. But in Cinderella 3, you see, the evil stepmother ruins everything, literally, by just going back in time and making sure that none of Cinderella's happy ending actually ever happened. But does that stop Cinderella? No! She goes on anyways, realizing that there's still a chance she might have her happy ending if the prince remembers her. But the stepmother is clever. She tries to stop the prince from remembering Cinderella, and Cinderella is locked out of the castle. But still, she does not stop. Cinderella uses her cleverness to break into the castle anyways and makes it all the way to the prince, only to be stopped by the wicked stepmother's magic. And she nearly gets sent away. Thankfully, Prince Charming comes along, but we're not really talking about him, are we? Anyways, it seems like all's well, but still, the stepmother will not rest until Cinderella is destroyed. So she sends her away in an evil version of the pumpkin carriage. But Cinderella still does not stop. She breaks out of the evil pumpkin carriage, kicks Lucifer off a cliff, and rides all the way back to the castle all on her own. But none of these crazy girl power scenes ever feel annoying or anything. They actually are genuinely good, empowering scenes for Cinderella as a character that don't ever make her come off as annoying or selfish or entitled or any such other word that makes most modern quote-unquote strong female characters so annoying. You see, this is how you write a great Disney princess who still retains those princessy aspects, but is also a great strong character at the same time. And that's why I love Cinderella. But still, I love 6 other Disney princesses more than her, so they must be really impressive at this point. Belle is a plucky character, and I mean that in a literal sense. Like, look up the definition of plucky. She never backs down in the face of adversity. Never in any kind of annoying way, though. And while I call her plucky, I wouldn't exactly call her quirky, which is funny because that's what all the villagers seem to think of her in the first song of the movie. But ironically, they all seem to be a lot quirkier than Belle is. Then again, I suppose if you think about it, perhaps they think that she is weird because she's the only one who isn't weird. But anyway, Belle is more than just plucky. She is also a dreamer. She wants much more than the simple world can provide. At the same time, she isn't selfish or unrealistic, because she doesn't expect the world to bend to her will and give her all her hopes and dreams. She knows that that's all really just a fantasy, but of course it doesn't stop her from dreaming anyways. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse, or at least that's what she thinks at first, when she meets the Beast, and is forced to make the hardest decision of her life, choosing to stay at his castle in place of her father. This is definitely up there in the most brave decisions any princess has had to make, and Belle earns a lot of points for this one moment. But just because she stays with the Beast doesn't mean that she's happy with it, and her stubbornness is kind of justified and understandable, because it's not like the Beast ever did anything good for her. Not yet, anyways. Though, of course, because of her stubbornness and the castle staff trying to give the Beast advice, eventually he starts to mellow out and show who he really is when he isn't all uptight and angry all the time. Belle helps to make Beast into a better person, and in the end, when the Beast overcomes his flaws, returning to his true form, Prince Adam, he finally is able to give Belle everything she dreamed of. Belle first had to earn that by choosing to look past the Beast's, well, beastly exterior, and see the good inside him, even when it seemed like there was none. Unlike certain people, such as Gaston, who only judge people by their outer appearances, and choose to see them as either perfectly good or horrendously evil, depending on what they look like. Belle is a fantastic Disney princess, and it's a shame that she just barely misses out on the top 5, but that's mainly because of a certain recent character who we'll get to in a little bit. And speaking of getting to, next. Remember when I said Kida is a Disney princess who is unfairly excluded from the canon, who happens to be diverse? Well, guess what? The same applies to Esmeralda, who's from an even older movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Kinda sus, Disney, that you would exclude 2 of the most diverse princesses. And anyways, Esmeralda is a fantastic character. She's wildly entertaining and thoroughly likable, and her heart is always in the right place. Even when no one else in the world would show mercy and kindness to Quasimodo, Esmeralda was there, and when she prays not for herself, but instead for her people, showing that the needs of others are more important to her than the needs of herself. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't have her own problems, as she lives in a cruel and unfair racist and classist society, filled with people who just want to put themselves on top and push everyone else below them so that they can have all the power. And unfortunately, Esmeralda and her people are the victims in this case. But the fact that Esmeralda still chooses to do good instead, and to not take revenge or be spiteful or hateful despite all the bad things that have happened to her, shows how much better she really is than all those people who mistreated her. If a character as great as Esmeralda is only 5th on this list, then that must mean the top 4 are truly something spicy. Why did I say spicy? That sounds so stupid. Anyways, let's move on. Next up, yet another unofficial Disney princess in Megara, or really just Meg. I mean, who actually calls her Megara? Anyways, I assert that she does in fact count as a Disney princess. Consider, Zeus is the king of the gods. Hercules is his son. Meg marries Hercules. Well, assumedly. I mean, it'd be pretty stupid if she didn't. Therefore, she is the princess of the gods. But not really. But she's the princess because she married the prince of the gods. You get my point. Either way, she's an outstandingly amazing character. Similar to Tiana, Meg is super sassy. Although, unlike Tiana, she never has weak moments of sass where she gets kind of annoying. No, Meg is always funny when she's sassy. Mostly because whenever she's sassing on something, it's something that kind of needed to be sassed on, you know, like Hades. Her nicknames for all the characters are hysterical, and she has one of the most creative and unique designs of all the princess characters, and too bad Disney rarely ever merchandises that amazing design. But what I love most about Meg is actually her story, and how, due to the tragic events of her life, she's ended up in a deal with the devil, or Hades to be specific in this case. But despite working for Hades, she's not actually a bad person. She's just forced to do bad things. And if she doesn't, she'll never be free again. But once she meets Hercules, she realizes she can't keep going on with this life of working for the villain, as she knows it's wrong, and that it would break Hercules' heart if he found out. So, she chooses to change sides. Ultimately, it costs her her life. But of course, Hercules saves her like a few minutes later anyway, so, don't get too sad about that. But despite her being brought back to life, the meaning still stands. As far as I know, Meg is the only Disney princess to actually die. And not only does she die, but she dies doing the right thing, choosing to live above her past, becoming a better person. And if it weren't for her sacrifice, Hercules would have lost. Also, did I mention that I Won't Say I'm in Love is probably the most catchy Disney song of all time? Rapunzel is a great example of an actually strong female character. And I mean that literally, like, she's literally physically strong. How else is she able to pull up Mother Gothel with her hair all the time? But that's besides the point. She's yet another, and I hate to sound like a broken record here, but great personality, amazing design, etc., etc. But on top of all that, what makes her better than the previous ones is that she has a flawed worldview and a revelation that comes along to reveal the truth, giving her one of the best arcs of any of the Disney princesses. At first, she thinks that seeing the floating lights is all she really wants or needs. But on her adventures with Flynn Rider / Eugene, she discovers that there's more to him than she first realized. And ultimately, once she sees the floating lights, it hits her that seeing these lights isn't what truly would make her happy. It's not a dream that could last forever. It's a one and done, that's that. But Eugene, he will last forever. Seeing lights is not the key to happiness, but being with those who you love is. A beautiful message, if I dare say, but much more importantly than that, when I said Aurora was the best-looking Disney princess, I lied. It's actually Rapunzel, but only when she cuts her hair short.
Now I'm going to take this next moment to explain to all of you why short-haired girls are objectively better than long-haired girls. You see,
and in the number 2 spot, we find Mirabelle, the most recent character, who I almost didn't include on this list because I wasn't sure if she actually counted as a Disney princess or not. I wasn't having very much success looking up direct confirmation or not, probably because Disney is still deciding if she's marketable enough or some such nonsense. But then I thought, wait, I'm also including Esmeralda on this list, and she's not exactly a princess in any way either, so it'd be a bit of a double standard on my part if I were to include Esmeralda but not Mirabelle. And she's pretty princess-like anyways, so I figured, oh, what the heck, why not? And, well, she's just a fantastic character in general, so she ranks super high. And this is what I meant when I said Belle was kicked off of the top 5 earlier, which is unfortunate for Belle, but Mirabelle is just that good, honestly. Her story arc of being the odd one out in her family, the only one without any powers, and thinking that she has to prove some point to fit in and be on the same level as everyone else, is great. And the best part is, of course, when she realizes that she doesn't actually have to prove anything, that she was already perfect as she is, and that this proving thing was only forced upon her by her grandma, who doesn't understand her. But eventually they look past each other's flaws and bring their family back together after it was crumbling. And also, might I add, that Mirabelle is just very adorable and likable in general. She's quite possibly the funniest out of all the Disney princesses. The stair scene with the bird is hysterical, and I laugh every time.
Oh, and I almost forgot to mention how Mirabelle also puts on this sort of fake tough persona because she doesn't want to come off as too sweet and nice. But of course, it's always hilarious to watch because she is definitely not the tough kind of girl.
And on another smaller note, it's nice that we finally have a Disney princess with glasses, as I guess before Disney thought that somehow having glasses made them less attractive or something like that, and therefore less marketable, or other such nonsense. The only other Disney protagonist I can even think of who has glasses is Milo from Atlantis, and he's supposed to be a nerd, but that's enough of that. And through the process of elimination, you have probably already figured out who the number one character is, and it's obviously Mulan. I mean, who else could it be? Haha, look, another Disney princess who isn't even actually a princess. Funny how the number one best princess isn't even a princess. But anyways, Mulan is not only the best Disney princess because she can sword fight. I mean, Raya can also do that, and she's kind of...
But because she's the most relatable.
And amongst the most entertaining of all the Disney princesses. Her life struggles are very understandable, and thus relatable. Her song Reflection, which might just be the greatest Disney song of all time, being the other contender I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Colors of the Wind, is a great showcase of everything that makes her such a spectacular character. Well, except the comedic bits, because it's a very serious song. Anyone, no matter who they are, can relate to that feeling of the weight of the world being on your shoulders, that you have to be perfect and do everything just right, or else you'll disappoint everyone. Mulan wants to do what is right, but sometimes knowing what is right and what is wrong is much harder than you think. Should we strive to be what the world wants of us and fit in perfectly with everyone else? Perhaps that is the right decision, because we are keeping everything perfectly as it is. Or should we try to be something different, to express ourselves in a new way, but risk failure and humiliation? Despite all the struggles Mulan goes through, she never complains, unlike Merida or Moana. She accepts things for how they are, but that doesn't mean she isn't willing to do the right thing when the right thing has to be done. Like when her father is drafted to the army, but she knows that he won't survive if he goes, which of course is the whole plot of the movie. And throughout all of this, Mulan stays hopeful. Even though she knows things could go wrong, she chooses to be positive instead of negative. Her whole personality is generally very cheerful and positive. And that's yet another aspect that makes her such a great character. She can also be very funny when she wants to be, mainly due to awkward situations throughout the movie, but they're always hilarious to see play out. Ultimately, Mulan makes a difference for the better in her world, not because she set out to do so and prove some sort of point, but because she ended up proving that point simply by doing good things. Her actions spoke louder than her words ever could have. And the honor she received at the end of the movie, she well earned. Mulan might in fact be not only my favorite Disney princess, but perhaps even my favorite Disney protagonist of all time.
Also, what kind of a guy doesn't love a woman who could beat him in a fight? I'm not a weirdo, you are. Thank you all for watching this video, and make sure to click the subscribe button if you want to keep up with all my future videos I plan to make. Leave a like if you enjoyed, tell me your rankings in the comments down below, share the video with everyone else you know, especially if they're Disney Princess fans, and most importantly of all, stay iconic! Also, the She-Hulk reviews are cancelled because there doesn't seem to be enough interest in either my reviews or the show.